have I done? What have I done? What have I done? Hi, I'm John Ficarra. Welcome to Ficarra Classic, and that is an excellent question. Now I'm going to try over the next few minutes to explain what I have done. If you've been watching my Instagram at Ficarra Classic, you probably have seen that I purchased a 1973 Porsche 911E Targa limousine. It's a questionable purchase, let's say. And people might be questioning my sanity right now. But I want to tell you the whole story, and we'll get to the car in a little bit. But let's start at the beginning. Now, the beginning is, this car appeared on the internet, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. I know I saw it on Barn Finds in 2019. It popped up on the Drive. It popped up on Renlist. It popped up everywhere. And because people were like, what is this monstrosity? People, of course, sent it to me because it has a 959 body kit. So I'm into 959s. It's an unusual car. I'm into unusual cars. And it participated in the 1991 One Lap of America, driven by the amazing entrepreneur Rocky Aoki. And people knew I was into One Lap and the Cannonball, and they sent it to me. And, you get worn down over time. And eventually, and the price kept dropping. It was, I don't know, it started off around 25,000. People thought it was crazy, and it kind of went down and down and down. And last year went down to about 18,000. I started getting more and more messages. So last July, I thought it'd be fun. I wrote on Facebook Messenger, I'm like, hey, I'm interested. How much? And they're like, 18 grand. And I'm like, nah, that's not going to work. So I threw them a number. They said no. And I kind of let it go. I figured I'd made an effort, let's do something with this insane machine. But I wasn't going to spend that kind of money on a gutted, no-engined, questionable limo thing. So I let it sit for quite a few months. Later in 2023, Ed Bolian invited me along to go on the US Express with him in his Rolls Royce. And of course I said yes. And that will be the subject of another video, and probably another video I'll do on VinWiki. And Ed's done a video on VinWiki, you can check that out. We all got in the car with the Rolls Royce. It was an amazing run. It was the usual Red Ball Garage to Portofino Cannonball run, and the rules were that it had to be from the US Express era. So we ran this older Rolls Royce, and we dressed as sheiks. And of course we drove with Trevin Hermosillo, who is from Sway Industries, one of VinWiki's big sponsors. So the three of us set off, and it was an absolute blast. You do your driving, we did a few stints, and it's always the 20-hour mark, and you're just kind of halfway through the country, and you're tired, and you've all driven and slept, and you're kind of wired a little bit, and you start having crazy conversations. And Ed's like, what do you want to do next year? And I'm like, I'm not really sure. And he's like, let's talk about, what kind of cars you probably should buy and things like that. And Ed's absolutely brilliant. He's been a fantastic YouTube mentor, a great friend. And we had the craziest conversation. And he's like, what's your car? Like, what can be your car on YouTube? Like, that symbolizes you. And, I have the Audi Quattro Cannonball car, and I love that car. But half the time, people think it's Ed's car because he had one as well. And I'm like, well, maybe not that. And the ambulance is great, but, I don't know how far I can go with an old ambulance. And I'm like, I'd love to get, an old, pre-war race car or something like that. And I was trying to think of something that was feasible at the time. And it popped up in my head. And I remembered this crazy old limo. And I'm like, well, how about a Porsche Targa limousine? And Ed was like, I've seen that. And I think everybody at this point who's a car guy somewhere has seen this thing, pictures of it. And he's like, interesting. I mean, it does hit all my points, right? It's like 959, Porsche, weird, one lap cannonball. And he's like, yeah, maybe we should check it out. Now, I haven't been to LA in a long time, and that's where this car was. And I figured we're driving into LA. Let's go take a look at it. And so I messengered the guy, and of course, they still had it. It'd been for sale for 4 or 5 years. No one was going to buy it. And I'm like, can I come take a look? And he's like, sure, I'll set it up with the owner. So apparently he wasn't the owner. He was just representing it for the owner. And we kind of set up a time. Now, you have to remember, the context of this is that we were driving an old Rolls Royce across the country, and we got in after 35 hours or so of not sleeping. And we get in Sunday morning at 2 or 3 a.m. It was a fantastic run, one of my favorites of all time. And you stay up and you wait for the other cars to come rolling in, and you cheer them and you cheer everybody until everybody comes in. And so you don't get much sleep that morning. And we took a nap and we had breakfast, and then we had an awards ceremony which got pushed back. And so I wanted to see the car during the daytime. So I said, how about 4 or 5? And the guy's all, sure, whenever you want to come over. The awards ceremony got pushed back, so it was like 4, then it was 5. So we went straight from the awards ceremony and hopped on the freeway. It was me, Ed, Trevin, and Trevin's great wife, Emma, and we're in the Rolls, and we're driving. We're like, we know where it is. It's up in Silver Lake section of Los Angeles. And we're like, well, who owns this car? Because we still didn't know exactly who owned it. Like, who bought this car? How did he get it? There's no information on the internet. We're just kind of making things up. And, one idea was that he was a contractor who had fixed a house and the car was abandoned there. Maybe he picked it up, or we came up with all kinds of really crazy ideas. And I put out there, like, maybe it's like an artist, and he saw some kind of cool sculptural thing to it and it had to be something. Guess what? I was right. So we pull into Silver Lake, park the Rolls, steep hill. There's these little cottages on the street, and we go down the street, and of course, it's like cute cottage, cute cottage, cute cottage, and then there's this house with a huge wall in front of it, and a big gate, and a glowing green light out front, because it was dark by now, okay? And it's 2 days before Halloween. And we're, again, no sleep, it's Halloween, and it's like a glowing green orb, and I call him, I'm like, we're here, and this gate opens. You can't see the house. I mean, it is a huge gate, and it opens up, and I'm expecting like Riff Raff from Rocky Horror Picture Show to open the door and be like, hello, and it wasn't far from that. No, I don't mean Riff Raff into the door, but the door opens, and we go inside, and it is owned by Baron Margo. Now, Baron is an artist who's been in the LA area for 50 years or so, and he's a fantastic guy, and his daughter was there as well. But all of his art is everywhere, and bits of other art and sculpture. I mean, from the second you walk in, and there's chunks of old Honda motorcycles, and there's like a Cadillac sandrail contraption over here, and it's all fantastic. But remember, it's all dimly lit, dark, Halloween, we're exhausted. And as we walk in, you're like, what is going on? And under this kind of lean-to next to his house was the car. So we walk up and look at the car. Baron and his daughter were really nice, and we kind of take a look at it. And it was exactly what it looked like in the pictures. It was unfinished. It was raw. It was, there was some body work had been done. The interior was gutted. Baron himself had started building this bar in there and a few other little things he had started constructing. I mean, amazingly creative guy. I'm like, it's not in bad shape. I mean, the fiberglass bodywork's kind of cool, but that could be hiding a lot of sins. How was the limo part of it done? I had no idea. But it was cool to see it. We're looking, and there's like little sculptures, and like he makes things out of, it's kind of a 50s aesthetic kind of sci-fi thing he does, or like 60s. Things are made out of objects, found objects, and he welds them together. And there's like robots over here. And his daughter was like, would you like to see more of it? And we're like, yes. And Trevin and Emma are in from Montana, and they've never seen anything like this before. And they're like, oh yeah. And like Ed turns to me quietly, he goes, this is where we die. And, and I mean, obviously part joking, but it was, we're like, it's just a weird environment to be in, dumped in after a cannonball. So we go in his house, and I can't even describe it. I'm going to show you some pictures here, but it is extraordinary. His entire house is a museum of his own artwork. You go in and how do I describe it? You're looking at it right now. There were objects. There was a chimpanzee on a bicycle, and there was like this globe-headed man over the door, and there's this woman made out of, I don't know what was she made out of. She was glowing, and we go through the house, and there's a spaceship, and there's like, I mean, every bit of the house has the coolest stuff, and like most of it I wanted to take home. Like, this is so amazing. And all of us were kind of in a wonder of all of it. Like, this was not what we expected when we came into anyone's house. And Baron was really fantastic. He showed us everything, explained us stuff. His daughter was brilliant. She's like, would you like to see the back? And we're like, oh yeah. Oh yeah. So there was another building he had constructed out back with more of his stuff. And there was this belly tank with a real stuffed bear in it that was like, had a Soviet hat on it, and it was like a rocket ship thing, and the whole place was off the charts. There was other artwork here. Some of it, where is it? Right over here, this one. This one was sitting there amongst everything else, and obviously we got a piece of his artwork. And it was just absolutely brilliant. So we get out, and they had built a fire, and we're sitting there chatting, and I mean, we're all about to fall asleep. Ed, who is the master negotiator, right? You know, the shrewd negotiator, even he's a little off his game, because we're just like, oh my gosh. And we start talking about, like, you know, do we want it? Do we not want it? We're kind of whispering. Should we go for it? Should we make an offer? And finally, yeah, we should do this. Let's just try it. Let's do it. And Ed starts kind of, you know, saying, well, you know, what do you think? And Baron obviously has had this car since 2008. He bought it from the body shop that Rocky Aoki had left it at. And he bought it only a few months before Rocky died, and he had an old title, but it wasn't retitled, and it was, the paperwork was a little funky. And he's like, you know, what would it cost you to take two 911s and put them together? He goes, you know, that's going to cost you like $100,000. And we're like, man, that's probably not what it's worth. So we didn't arrive at a number. We kind of said, you know, we would be willing to pay this much, and maybe, you know, you could throw in some artwork, which is how we got this, and maybe we could, you know, work out something because we'd like to promote you because you're brilliant, your artwork's brilliant. But we didn't come to an answer. And we ended up leaving, and I was like, okay, that's, you know, we took another shot. At it, fine. And as we walked out, more stuff. But he has a lot across from his house filled with these belly tank vehicles, motorcycles, and cars made out of huge pieces of stainless, just mind-blowingly cool stuff. So I figured, okay, I'm going to go home. You know, we're going to get some rest. Let's all talk about this in a week to see if this is a smart idea. Time passed, and I called them up. I go, you know, where are we with this? And they didn't want to budge on price, and I didn't want to budge on price. And I'm like, let's talk after the holidays. So after the holidays, I wrote him and I said, you know, one last, I mean, obviously I must want to buy it if I tried so many times. Like, something subconsciously wanted the car. And I was like, you know, let's do this. And they said, okay. And at that point, really, which was great, they had worked out the title. So they had spent the time at the DMV, and that was worth a whole chunk of it, getting a proper new title to me and paying all the back fees and everything. So I'm like, that's huge. That's worth a few $1,000s. And so we came to a deal. I get the car, we get a little bit of artwork, and, you know, the car finds a new home and possibly a new life out on the road. So we drove down there. Mechanic Matt and I hooked up the ambulance and the trailer. We drove all the way 8 hours down to LA, and we picked up the car, and they were great. They already had it staged out there for us, and we just put a winch on it and dragged it on the trailer and brought it home. Now it's here. Now it's time to see what I bought, which will be the next video. We'll go out to the garage and, you know, start tinkering on it. We had to drag it into the garage. But real quick, I just want to tell you a little background about Rocky Aoki. So, like, it was Rocky Aoki's car. And if you go online, you just search Rocky Aoki Limo, this thing pops up. And in fact, you just search Rocky Aoki, and like one of the top 10 searches are Rocky Aoki Limo. Rocky Aoki was this force of nature who came over from Japan in the 60s. He was an amateur wrestler. He was accepted to the Japanese wrestling team. He was eventually put in the Hall of Fame of Wrestling. He was a owner of a kind of crazy club in New York. He owned a soft porn magazine. He raced offshore boats. I mean, seriously offshore, those big badass boats from like Miami Vice. That was him. He was a balloonist. He set a record for distance of ballooning from Japan all the way to California, which stood for years. An adrenaline junkie, obviously. Just, he was interested in backgammon, so he learned it. And in 4 years, he was like a world champion backgammon player. But what we most know him for is he founded the restaurant chain Benihana. And I think everybody knows who they are, where they do all the show in front of you, the teppanyaki kind of setup, and they flip things, and it's an amazing culinary experience. And I think everybody's been to one, or hopefully you go to one at some point. He had founded that, brought that idea over from Japan, made it huge, international, opened like 70 restaurants. Just, I mean, I would love to have met the guy, because obviously he was on the boil the whole time. So one of those things he did to kind of fulfill his need for speed was to do the One Lap of America. And the One Lap of America started in 1984. And he was there with his first car, which I believe was a Rolls Royce that he had. And then he moved on to different cars. And then he got hooked up with Jim Bardia, who built limousines, and they raced like Cadillac limousines with these huge V8s in them. He had a Corvette limousine. I think he had a Volkswagen Beetle limousine. So he got into the limousine thing. And one of the things was they had a microwave inside that he would make the new Benihana microwave dinners as a kind of promotional thing. But I mean, off the charts. So he had this car built, and I'm not sure who built it and when. And he raced it in 1991 in the One Lap of America. So this car drove on tracks. And from what I've heard from Brock Yates Jr., that it was terribly slow and it was a terrible car. Jim Bardia also said it was a horrible car. He refused even to say that a limousine place made it. He said a body shop made that thing. So we'll find out more, but nobody held it in high regard other than it was super cool, right? So and that's kind of Rocky's thing. Rocky did things that were, at that time, super cool. And I mean, tons of it. So it's kind of neat to have one of his cars, one of his limousines, and we'll see what it turns into. So stay tuned and, like and subscribe, of course. And we'll be more and more on the crazy limousine. And I'm hoping it turns into something we can drive. And just to set expectations, this might be a total wash. And I may have made a huge, huge mistake. But if I haven't, we're going to try to bring it back to life. That's what I would love to do in my heart. I would love to drive that thing in a cannonball. So I guess that's my goal. And we'll see how far I can get with it. Tavarish has got his Hurricane McLaren that he's been chasing. That's his white whale. This is my slightly cheaper white whale. So we'll see what happens with it. So again, thanks for watching. Oh, I have a merch store now. I'll put a link in the description below. That's going to help fund all of this. We'll be putting stuff in the merch store as that develops, and you can buy a few things if you'd please. So again, thank you. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.